So whatever wind actually reaches the desert blow from the cooler to warmer region and their relative humidity is lowered. So why exactly this relative humidity is lowered? Because when this uh, cool wind actually, whatever wind reaches the desert blow from the cooler to warmer region. So when the cool air will actually uh, suppose this is a surface, and if the cool air is coming to this surface, then its temperature will increase, the temperature of air will increase, and that's why the relative humidity will decrease, because relative humidity of any air increases only when its temperature is lowered. So when the temperature is lowered, then the relative humidity increases. So that's why when these all the cold winds blow, whatever wind reaches the desert blow from the cooler to warm region and their relative humidity is lowered, making the condensation almost impossible, because for condensation to take place, you have to have a high relative humidity, then only the air will get saturated. There is scarcely any cloud in the continuous blue sky, so cloud cover is not present in these places. The relative humidity is extremely low, decreasing from 60% in the coastal district to less than 30% in the desert interior. So definitely in the coastal areas, because coastal area you have a lot of evaporation, that's why the relative humidity is more in the coastal area compared to the continental interior, where there is no water body. So under such condition, every bit of moisture is evaporated and the desert thus region of permanent drought. So under such condition, when the relative humidity is very low, the when the temperature increases, then all the whatever moisture is present, that also get evaporated, and that's why this area faces the permanent drought like situation. Precipitation is both scarce and most unreliable. A coastal station like Massawa on the Red Sea, as illustrated in the figure, receive light scattered shower from the onshore winds amounting to the 5.9 inches for the year. The Massawa, basically it is situated on the Red Sea. That's why you can see this is where the Massawa is. This is where Massawa is. So whenever this it comes under the influence of trade winds, this is onshore wind, then this area receive some amount of rainfall. As we have already talked about, when this winds reaches towards to the west of the continent, then by the time they actually lose their moisture. That's why these all those areas which are situated in the coastal area, they have a somewhat better precipitation than the interior areas. So Massawa on the Red Sea has a 5.9 inches for year. This precipitation is 5.9 inches. On the western coast, the presence of cold currents gives rise to mist and fog by chilling the oncoming air. This air is later warmed by contact with the hot land and later rainfalls. So this is also we have to understand why, because suppose if you see that in the map, these are the cold current. This cold current is also responsible for the desertification in these areas, because see, this is cold water. So suppose if the wind is onshore wind is coming, and if this wind has a somewhat little bit of moisture, then this moisture will get itself condensed here itself over the what is cold current, because the temperature of this air lying over the cold current will be less. That's why when the temperature will decrease of this air that is coming from the oceans, then this air will start getting condensed and it will lead to the formation of some kind of mist or fog in these places. If this cold current was not present, then this moist air that is coming from the oceans towards the land, it would have reached to the land and it may have got uplifted by these mountains. Then it would have actually made some rainfall here on the land. But this because of the presence of this cold current, these winds, whatever moisture is present in these winds, it get condensed over the cold current itself. That's why by the time this air reaches to this place, they would already lose their moisture. So only little bit of rainfall takes place in these places. So that's why this is called as desiccating effect of the cold current. So this cold current is also one reason why exactly this area are desert. So this is what a little rainfalls. The desiccating effect of the cold Peruvian current along the Chilean coast is so pronounced that the mean annual rainfall for the Atacama Desert is not more than half an inch. The rain normally occurs as a violent thunderstorm of the conventional type. Because definitely here this temperature is very high, that's why when the surface will get heated, then the air will start rising, and that's why here we have only conventional type of rainfall, which actually when the air will rise, then it will lead to the formation of uh, cumulonimbus type of clouds, and that's why you have a thunderstorm also in these places. It bursts suddenly and pours continuously for a few hours over a small area. An inch or more may be recorded in one single shower. The thunderstorm is so violent and comes so suddenly that it has a disastrous consequences on desert landforms. So now we will talk about the temperature. The desert are some of the hottest spot on the earth and have a high temperature throughout the year. Why these areas have a high temperature we have already discussed, because first of all this area does not have a cloud cover. That's why despite the fact that sun is vertical over the equator, but still the highest temperature is found, away from the equator at the subtropical high pressure belt. Otherwise, actually, the highest temperature should have been found on the equator, given the fact that sun remains almost vertical over the equator. But still, highest temperature is found in the subtropical high pressure belt. So there are two reasons why exactly these areas have the highest temperature in the world, this subtropical high pressure belt. Because first, once the air actually rise, then it rises, then it collide with the tropopause and it get bifurcated in two part. One part move northward, another part move southward. By the time it reaches to the subtropical high pressure belt, it is start descending. So whenever it descend, it get compressed adiabatically, and that's why the temperature of this air becomes very high. The second reason is that whenever the air is descending, there will be no cloud cover, because cloud cannot be formed. Cloud can be formed only when the air is rising. So that is the reason why this equatorial area don't have the highest temperature in the world, because these area remain cloudy throughout the year because of the fact that the air keep on rising throughout the year. So that's why it will lead to the formation of clouds. So that's why these area remain cloudy, and that is the reason why all the insolation coming from the sun get reflected back by these clouds. But in the subtropical high pressure, the sky remains clear, and that's why the incoming solar radiation actually comes to the surface without getting reflected by the clouds, because cloud is not present. So that's why this area receive maximum amount of incoming solar radiation, and that is the reason why the temperature in these areas are very high. So desert, some of the hottest spot on the earth and have a high temperature throughout the year. There is no cold season in the desert, hot desert, and the average summer temperature is around 80 degree Fahrenheit. The highest shade uh, temperature recorded is 136 degree Fahrenheit. So on the 13th September 1922 at Al Azizia. This is the hottest place in the world. So, 25 miles south of Tripoli, Libya, in the Sahara. Days are unbearably hot, and in the open barren sand, 170 degree Fahrenheit is often recorded. The reason for the high temperature are obvious. These all the reasons we have already discussed. A clear cloudless sky, in insolation, intense insolation, dry air, and a rapid rate of evaporation. Although this rapid rate of evaporation they have written in this book, but I cannot understand exactly how this rapid rate of evaporation will be responsible for a high temperature. It can be responsible for a humidity, and that is definitely in this way actually it can increase the temperature, because whenever you have a high humidity, high water vapor present in the atmosphere, then definitely it will absorb the terrestrial radiation radiated by the earth's surface, and that's how it can work as a blanket. So that's how it will actually increase the temperature of these areas. Otherwise, generally whenever the evaporation takes place, then evaporation is also responsible for lowering down the temperature, because you may have observed that whenever water get evaporated, then it requires some amount of energy to get itself evaporated, and when the this energy is taken from the surrounding environment, and consequently the temperature of the surrounding environment get decreased. So you know that the temperature can, or this evaporation also sometimes lower down the temperature. You may have also observed that whenever if you go to the some heavily forested area, you will find that the temperature of these area will be somewhat less compared to the other areas where you have a concrete roads and buildings, because this plant actually, through their stomata, they release water. When this water get evaporated through the process known as evapotranspiration, then when this water get evaporated, then it requires some amount of energy, and this energy is taken from the surrounding environment. That's why the temperature of the surrounding environment get decreased. So evaporation can lead to the lowering of the temperature of the surrounding as well. So here actually, because high evaporation, the humidity actually increases, and that's why it may act as a blanket for the surface. Now, the coastal deserts, by virtue of their maritime influence and cooling effect of cold current, have a much lower temperature. Example, Arica has a mean annual temperature of 6 degree. Uh, Akuk has a 65 degree Fahrenheit. Walvis Bay, South Africa, only 63 degree Fahrenheit. So this because of the cooling effect. First, like for example, we have just discussed these areas, because the cold current is flowing. That's why these area will have a less temperature coastal area compared to the interior area. Compared to the interior area somewhere here, um, this because the cold current is flowing. That's why definitely it is going to lower down the temperature of these adjacent coastal areas, and at the same time you have a maritime influence. Maritime influence means uh, when uh, through sea breeze, we have already talked about whenever coastal area has a uh, somewhat less temperature compared to the continental area, because this ocean is there. So here it will be always in the summer it will be in this area, the pressure in this area on the land will be somewhat lower compared to the oceans, adjacent ocean. So that's why the wind will start moving from ocean towards the land. This is called as sea breeze. So that definitely is going to lower down the temperature of these areas, coastal areas. And water, because see, because water has a what is called as more specific heat compared to the land. So that's why water, the temperature of water remains somewhat less compared to the adjacent land. So that is the reason why this has a maritime influence. So the coastal area and desert has a less temperature compared to the those areas which are situated in an interior part of this desert. So here you have a, and the annual temperature is equally small. In this place, annual temperature range is also equally small because these areas have a maritime impact. It means the difference between the maximum temperature found in the summer and the minimum temperature found in the winter is going to be less. Example, only 9 degree Fahrenheit in Arica, 10 degree in Iquique, and 10.10 degree Fahrenheit in Walvis Bay. The desert interior, however, experiences higher summer temperature, much higher summer temperature. Higher summer and winter months are rather cold in the interior, because this phenomena is known as continentality. Continentality means in the interior part of this desert, they have a very high temperature in the summer because there is no maritime influence in these areas, and winter months are rather cold because during the winter, because the land has a you know land actually has a land basically cools down also very fast, and it also heats up also very fast. So that's why summer temperature becomes high and winter's temperature also becomes very low. For example, in Sala in the Sahara has a temperature of 99 degree in the hottest month, but only 55 degree in the coldest month. That's why the annual temperature range is very high in the 44 degree Fahrenheit. Range of Yuma is 36 degree Fahrenheit, and Jokogawa is 41 degree Fahrenheit. In comparison, the station Masaba illustrated in the figure, located near the coast facing the Red Sea, has only moderate range of 70 degree Fahrenheit, because we have already talked about because of the maritime influence. Its hottest month in July is 95 degree Fahrenheit, and coldest month in January is 78 degree Fahrenheit. So that's why this is called as oceanicity, this phenomena, because of the influence of the oceans. The because in the winter season, the adjacent oceans temperature of adjacent ocean will be warmer compared to the land, because of the fact that the water has a tendency to cool down also slowly, and it actually heats up also gradually. So that's why in the summer season the temperature of water will oceans will remain little bit high. That will actually have an impact on the adjacent coastal area, because the temperature of the adjacent coastal area will not be as low as that of those areas which are situated in the interior part of the continent. On the contrary, in the winter season, in the summer season, the temperature of the oceans will be somewhat somewhat less compared to the temperature of the adjacent coastal area. So that's why this will have a cooling impact on the land, and that is why the annual temperature range of those places which is situated in the on the coastal area will be always smaller. Diurnal range of the temperature in desert is very great. Intense insolation by day in a region of dry air and no cloud causes the temperature to rise with the sun. Uh, Barren ground is so intensely heated that by noon, particularly in summer, a reading of 120 degree Fahrenheit is common. But as soon as the sun sets, land loses heat very quickly by radiation, and the mercury column in the thermometer drops to well below the mean temperature. Because in the daytime there is no cloud cover, there is no cloud cover in the sky. That's why there is no cloud cover. That's why the incoming solar radiation actually comes onto the surface without having been reflected or or absorbed or you know scattered. But so that's why more amount of insolation is received during the daytime. But that's why the temperature during the daytime increases uh, to a very high temperature. But in the night time also, because the cloud is not present, that's why the earth terrestrial radiation also escape at a very fast pace into outer atmosphere, and that's why the cooling of the surface is very fast in the night time. And that's why the diurnal temperature range is very high, because in the daytime you have extremely high temperature and in the night time you have very low temperature. So that's why the diurnal temperature range in these places are very high. So barren ground is but as soon as the sun sets, the radiation very quickly by radiation, a mercury column in the thermometer drops to well below mean temperature. A daily temperature and range of 30 to 40 degree is very common in these areas, though in the Death Valley of California, an exceptionally great diurnal range of 74 degree Fahrenheit has been recorded. Frost may occur at the night in the winter. Frost may occur because the temperature in the night time decreases to a very minimum. So that's why all the moisture may get itself precipitated in the form of frost. These extreme of the temperature make desert living most trying. This explains why the desert people wear thick gown all day long to protect themselves from the glaring heat by the day and chilling frost by night. So, not to mention the sand grains and that are carried by wind. So, climatic condition now in the mid-latitude desert. Climatic condition in the mid-latitude desert are in many ways similar to those of the hot desert. So we are talking about now mid-latitude desert. That means the temperate desert. So in this area also climatic conditions are almost similar to those of the hot desert. Aridity is a keynote. Definitely aridity is going to be found in these places also. These inland basins lie hundreds of miles from the sea and are sheltered by the high mountain. These things we have already talked about all around them. So like Gobi uh, desert, it is surrounded from all the side by the mountains. You see in the picture, then you will find that this area is surrounded from all the side by the mountains. So all the winds coming from this side, they cannot make any rainfall in this area because it's a leeward side of the rain bearing. And if suppose westerly also moves in this direction, then they also cannot make any kind of rainfall in these areas. So that's why these areas are uh, sheltered by the high mountain all around them, and they are hundreds of miles from the sea. As a result, they are cut off from the rain-bearing wind. Occasionally, depression may penetrate the Asiatic continental mass and bright light rainfall in the winter. This depression they are talking about is a temperate depression. So, generally in the winter season, because this when the westerly shift southward, then this area comes under the belt of westerlies. So that's why it can this depression can bring some amount of light rainfall in the winter. Or unexpected convection rain may bless the parched land with brief shower in summer. So summer, if some kind of convection takes place, then that can also bring some amount of rainfall in these areas. For example, Kashgar in the western China in the Gobi Desert, as illustrated in figure, has most of its in 3.5 inches of annual precipitation in the summer. Due to their coldness and elevation, snowfall in winter. So because they are situated at a very high altitude and they are very cold. That's why snowfall also takes place in the winter seasons. From the 132b figure, it is clear that the summer are very hot, 80 degree Fahrenheit, and winters are extremely cold with 2 months below freezing point. The annual temperature range is 50 much greater than that of hot desert. Continentally account for this extreme temperature. We have already talked about this continentality because if some any if these deserts are situated in the interior part of the continent, then this land has a cap land actually get heated also very fast, and it cools down also very fast because that's why this continentality is responsible for very high annual temperature range, because in the summer this area becomes very hot, whereas in the winter its temperature uh, decreases to a very minimum. So that's why this area which are situated in the interior part of the continent, have a very high annual temperature range. Winter are often severe, freezing lakes and rivers and strong cold wind blow all the time. When the ice thaws in the early summer, flood occurs in many places. Great inhibiting factor to the settlement are the winter cold and the permanent aridity, besides remoteness from the sea. So this is what exactly the climate of temperate desert. Now we will talk about desert vegetation. So all desert have some form of vegetation such as grass, scrubs, herbs, weeds, roots, or bulbs. Though they may not appear green and fresh all the time, they remain dormant in the soil awaiting rain, which comes at a irregular interval or once in a many years. The environment so lacking in the moisture and so excessive in heat is most unfavorable for the plant growth, and a significant vegetation cannot be expected. But very rarely are these deserts where nothing grows. The predominant vegetation of both hot and mid-latitude desert is xerophytic or drought resistance scrubs. So they have developed many type of mechanism, like they have a great deep and widespread roots. They have thorny leaves. They have very sunken stomata. Their bark is very you can say thick bark, or you can say waxy leaves. which will prevent water from getting evaporated. So that's how they have actually devised a lot of mechanisms. Some are ephemerals, means they remain dormant during the season, uh, and they spring up once the rainfall takes place. Or some are perennial, which can withstand the drought by adapting to many different type of mechanism that we have just talked about. So this includes the cacti, thorny bush, long-rooted wiregrass, and scattered dwarf acacias. Trees are rare except where there is abundant groundwater to support the cluster of date palm. Along the western coastal desert washed by the cold current at Atacama Desert, the mist and fog formed by the chilling of warm air over cold current roll inland and nourish a thin cover of vegetation. These things we have just talked about, how these mist and fogs can be formed over this cold current. Plants that exist in desert have a highly specialized intense evaporation, uh, highly specialized means of adapting themselves to the arid environment. Means of adapting themselves to arid environment. Intense evaporation increases the salinity of the soil so that the dissolved salt water tend to accumulate on the surface, forming the hard pan. So if suppose if this soil, then whenever suppose if rainfall takes place, then these if this soil has a little bit of moisture, then because of intense evaporation, is all the salt will come up through the capillary action. They will come, and these salt will come through the capillary action, and when this water on the surface will get evaporated, leaving behind the salt. So that's how this hard pans are formed. Absence of moisture retard the rate of decomposition, and desert soil are very deficient in humus. So if the decomposition of humus has to take place, then both the temperature as well as humidity must be high, like in the mm, equatorial areas. Plant, whether annuals or perennials, must struggle to survive against both the aridity and poor soil. Annuals are those plants which actually spring up only once in a year, and perennial are those plants which always be uh, alive. Most desert shrubs has a long root and are well spaced out to gather moisture and search for groundwater. Plants have few or no leaves, and the foliage is either waxy, leathery, hairy, or needle-shaped to reduce the loss of water through transpiration. Some of them are entirely leafless, with pricks or thorns. Other, like a cacti, has a thick succulent stems to store up the water for the long drought. There are still other there is still other that shed their leaf during the drought. So this is another deciduous tree. There is another means of adapting to the dry climate. The seeds of many species of grass and herbs have a thick, tough skin to protect them while they lie dormant. So some of the seed also they have a covering over it, over themselves. They have a covering, a hard covering, which will prevent these seeds from the high temperature. And the moment some amount of rainfall will take place, then immediately they will get germinated. So that's how they remain dormant. The seed, many of the seeds of many of grassy herbs has a thick, tough skin to protect them while they are lie dormant. They germinate at once when their seeds are moistened by the next rain. In short, all plants must adapt themselves to survive in such an inhospitable region as the desert.